This is CBN NewsWatch.
It is Monday, August 31st. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Ephraim Graham. We begin this half hour with a man's death being at the center of a public dispute between President Donald Trump and Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler. Jay Bishop was shot and killed amid protest in Oregon Saturday night. The nonstop protest began following the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. A group of President Trump supporters traveled through the city Saturday night and clashed with counter-protesters. That's when pro-Trump supporter Jay Bishop was shot and killed. Sunday, President Donald Trump and Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler blamed each other for the violence. In one tweet, President Trump calls Wheeler a fool. At a news conference, Wheeler blamed the president for creating a, quote, toxic environment.
Mr. President, why this is the first time in decades that America has seen this level of violence? It's you who have created the hate and the division. It's you who have not found a way to say the names of black people killed by police officers, even as people in law enforcement have. And it's you who claimed that white supremacists are good people. Your campaign of fear is as anti-democratic as anything you've done to create hate and vitriol in our beautiful country.
President Donald Trump praised the militia supporter with a post on Twitter that read, "Rest in peace, Jay." Presidential hopeful Joe Biden issued his own statement on the deadly violence in Portland, saying, in part, the president recklessly encourages violence and he is weak. The president toured the areas hardest hit by Hurricane Laura this weekend. CBN contributor Chuck Holton is in the area and gives us this look at the damage and the response.
Cleanup operations are well underway across southern Texas and Louisiana in the wake of Hurricane Laura. While visiting the region Saturday, President Trump echoed the surprise many people expressed at the tremendous power of the storm when it hit.
This was almost coming in at a 5. It was a 5 a little bit out offshore, and you came in as a 4, but 150 mile an hour was up to 185 at one point. I don't know that we've ever seen that.
That was the strongest storm to ever strike Louisiana. I was talking to some individuals here today who've been living here all their lives. They can never remember hurricane force winds this far in North Louisiana that we experienced yesterday.
And like everything else this year, response has been affected by the COVID crisis.
Being a good neighbor means doing all the things you would normally do during a storm, just doing it from 6 feet away and with a mask on. Because we still are the state in the country with the most cases per capita. We still have tremendous challenges from COVID.
The governor is receiving criticism from residents about putting too much emphasis on the threat posed by the virus as opposed to this incredibly deadly storm. Especially in poor communities, people rely on local emergency shelters to help them survive not only during the storm but afterwards. And by closing all of them down and encouraging people to go to hotels in Baton Rouge and New Orleans, many people didn't have the wherewithal to do that, and now they say they've been abandoned.
We don't have water. The water is off in Lake Charles, they tell me. So we drinking rainwater.
The Golden Arms Apartments is a subsidized living facility that houses about 400 residents over age 65. Most of them got out before the storm hit. But a lack of transportation resulted in 60 or so riding out the storm. Without a local shelter to go to, they were stuck without essential services.
The lights went out like 2 o'clock this morning of the hurricane.
Now left without power, water, or transportation, these residents aren't sure what will happen to them.
Golden Arms is a good place to stay, but since the tornado and hurricane or whatever it was, we don't have no sanitary over here. The water's off, the toilets won't work.
CBN's Operation Blessing scrambled to get some aid to the Golden Arms Apartments until they could be safely evacuated. But the hotels are already full of refugees, and that fact is also hindering responders coming to help with the cleanup, now unable to find anywhere to stay. The Louisiana National Guard has deployed hundreds of troops to help with the cleanup efforts. Captain Randy Bordeaux is the unit's chaplain.
Especially when they get back from being evacuated, they're going to come into a devastation. So anyway, we can give them a heads up and some encouragement We're all in this together.
But Berto says the greatest needs aren't food, water, or electricity.
Their biggest needs right now are definitely prayers for spiritual help and to know that God is here. He's present with us at all times. And, God is our refuge, an ever-present help in a time of trouble. And anything we can give them to remind them that God has not left them, that He's here, is what we can do. Pray for it.
From Lake Charles, Louisiana, I'm Chuck Holton for CBN News.
A 65-year-old woman says she feels restored, and it's thanks to God and President Donald Trump. The president commuted the prison sentence of Alice Johnson in 2018, and Friday he granted her a full pardon. Before the president stepped in, Johnson was serving a life sentence for a nonviolent drug offense. During her speech at the Republican National Convention Thursday, she praised the president and shared insight into her personal relationship with God.
When President Trump heard about me, about the injustice of my story, he saw me as a person. He had compassion, and he acted. Free in body thanks to President Trump, but free in mind thanks to the Almighty God. I couldn't believe it. I always remembered that God knew my name, even in my darkest hour. But I never thought a president would.
Joining us now with his take on the president's action is managing editor of Faith Wire, Dan Andrews. So, Dan, so good to see you. We just heard the taste of Alice's speech from the RNC last week. She went on to champion President Trump signing the First Step Act, the act intended to improve criminal justice outcomes and to reduce the size of the federal prison population. What has the act done since the president signed it back in 2018?
Yeah, well, just to back up real quick, her story actually is really quite incredible. And what this act does is highlights people like hers. And she, as you mentioned there, had the nonviolent drug offense, but she was going through some personal, really crazy times. I mean, she lost her 10-year job at FedEx, was having a gambling problem, lost a child in a motorcycle accident, went through a divorce and a bankruptcy. So everything was going wrong for her. Obviously, that doesn't excuse her actions, and she says that as well. But it landed her in prison, and because of things like mandatory sentencing laws, she got a life sentence, and the judge couldn't use any discretion to come up with a different sentence. So since this bill has passed, this act has passed, they've been fighting things like systemic problems in the criminal justice system, like mandatory sentencing, other barriers for reentry in the cash bail system. Things of that nature have come to the forefront because of this.
Now, Johnson fired back against comments saying that she was propped up at the RNC. She said she could think for herself. What is your take on her speech?
Yeah, well, she did fire back at that because she pointed out the hypocrisy there, or at least the double standard, where someone else who was freed from prison, a former prisoner, spoke at the Democratic National Convention, and nobody called her a prop. And so she feels that she should be able to speak as well. And it stands to reason that she would want to speak at the Republican National Convention, because here is a woman who was rotting away in prison during multiple presidencies. This is since the 1990s. So President Trump is the one, that actually commuted her sentence and then eventually fully pardoned her. So it stands to reason that she'd be out there speaking at the Republican National Convention. But her speech was great. And as you mentioned, it highlighted her faith. And it really shows us what God can do to somebody. God provided her hope, even though she was behind bars. And she knew that her life had a purpose. And as she kind of alluded to there, she just didn't know that that purpose was going to be so high profile.
Great speech and great story. How has Johnson advocated for justice reform since her commutation?
Yeah, well, she's providing a voice to similar people in a similar situation to her that are sitting there behind bars with massive sentences that don't really fit the crime. And so she's been giving a voice to those people. And while they didn't give a specific number, but her and President Trump mentioned in the pardoning signing ceremony that they've helped dozens of people fighting for their freedom who have these similar sentences.
Do you think this will have an impact on the president's campaign efforts? Really quick.
Yeah, it's tough to say. I mean, but it does seem to buck the narrative of those who are trying to call Trump a racist. But, politics in 2020, I don't know how much of an impact. Hopefully people can just enjoy this great story because it's fantastic.
All right. You can watch Faith Wire on CBN's News Channel tonight at 9:30 Eastern. Dan Andrews, thank you so much. A milestone flight took place overseas this morning. The first ever Israeli flight direct to the UAE left Israel today. Senior Trump advisor Jared Kushner and National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien are part of the delegation that will spend 2 days working on the details of the historic peace agreement between Israel and the UAE. The word peace was written in Arabic, Hebrew, and English on the nose of the Israeli El Al plane, which will fly over Saudi Arabia. Over the weekend, the UAE formally ended a decades-long boycott of Israel.
This opens the door for what I can only call unbridled trade, tourism, investments, exchanges between the Middle East, two most advanced economies, and you will see how the sparks fly on this.
The UAE is the third Arab country to make peace with the Jewish state. Tributes and prayers are flowing from around the world following the death of Chadwick Boseman. His family confirmed the 43-year-old lost his private battle against colon cancer Friday. While he is best known for playing King T'Challa in Black Panther, the Anderson, South Carolina native was also a newlywed, a proud graduate of Howard University, and a man of faith who had the pleasure of sitting down with on more than one occasion.
Weapons will not be used to wage war on the world. It is not our way.
Chadwick Boseman's portrayal of the Black Panther in the Marvel Universe earned him a hero's place in the hearts of many, including myself. This film is special on so many levels. Did you feel that going in? It being the first of its kind?
Yes. No, I knew just in the novelty of it, you know, the fact that it is the first Black superhero movie on this platform. You know, I knew that there was something there, but I also knew that the world of Wakanda, the fact that it nods to what you know, ancient civilization, African empires, you can pull from many different places. And instead of generalizing things, to be specific and say, I'm going to pull from this great thing from this country and this great thing from this leader and this great thing from this warrior tribe. It's like you can pull from all the best things. So I knew that that was special.
Boseman was also special. As we now learn, he brought fictional and real-life hero stories to the big screen, even as he privately battled colon cancer.
I'm telling you this up front. The NAACP were not like most lawyers.
I first sat down with him following his portrayal of Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall, where he gave me a hard time for forgetting his resume. Jesse Owens, James Brown, now Thurgood Marshall.
Did you just say Jesse Owens? Did you say Jesse Owens?
Yes.
That's a different actor.
Oh, did I mess it up? You was Thurgood. Who's the other
I ain't gonna
iconic?
tell you. I'm not gonna tell you.
Oh man!
But it definitely wasn't Jesse Owens.
Okay, why did I think that? Then?
Okay,
all right.
Y'all getting this on film?
That's not like
God built me to last.
Of course, I meant to say Jackie Robinson.
We stand on his shoulders. He's walked the road that you know you should want to walk. He's courageous. He's everything that you want to play when you're an actor.
God made your ears. You didn't make them. You gonna argue with God's ears?
But here in Boseman's portrayal of James Brown is when people first began to notice his talent.
Our music is still affected by, you know, what he started because it was such an innovation.
Still ahead, a call to pray and respond to heal the racial division in America.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep. as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline, Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
A year before protests dominated the headlines, research showed most Americans felt race relations in the country were bad. As Charlene Aaron shows us, one man is helping people to respond by using scripture.
When you Google what the Bible says about racism, this article by Dr. Jim Dennison is the top result. In it, he highlights how Christians viewed slaves as their equal. And not a single New Testament leader owned slaves, even though many had the resources to purchase them. In light of the George Floyd case, Dennison says he's not surprised by the uptick in race-related inquiries.
This is much more a present tense issue than we were willing to admit it was. And I think we're looking for biblical guidance now.
Guidance that Dennison, a former pastor, eagerly shares.
Jesus died for every person we know. God made all of us in Genesis 1. According to Genesis 3, we're all descended from the same mother. We are, as Paul said in Galatians 3, there's neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female.
More than 1 million people seeking answers on topics from abortion to gender identity tune into his podcast and daily newsletter, as well as the Dennison Forum, a digital ministry that tackles current events from a biblical perspective. Through his extensive research, Dennison pushes back against the narrative that systemic racism doesn't exist in America.
First of all, that's wrong. Those that would say that that's the case are simply misstating the facts. They're not understanding the realities that are before us today. That in the criminal justice system, you're far more likely to be sentenced for the same crime if you're black than if you're white. As regards employment, that you're 50% less likely to get hired for sending out resumes if you have an African-American name than if you have an Anglo-sounding name.
Research shows the problem persists in many churches as well. For example, only 32% of white pastors strongly agree that my church is involved with racial reconciliation at the local level. 53% of African American pastors strongly agree with that statement. 56% of evangelicals believe that people of color are often put at a social disadvantage because of their race. 84% of blacks agree. All reasons why Dennison calls on believers to pray and respond, as Peter did in Acts chapter 10, when he said, God has shown me that I should not call anyone impure or unclean.
You start by getting alone with God and saying, Lord, show me, just like Peter, where this is in my heart. Reveal this to me, Lord.
Despite the nation's racial divide, Dennison is hopeful the church can lead the way.
Jesus is still king. He's King of Kings and he is Lord of Lords, and he still redeems all that he allows. We're still salt and light, and salt makes a difference you can't see, and light makes a difference that it may not know. And God can still use us in eternal ways if we're willing to be used. So the encouragement I would bring us in this time between the times is simply this: don't give up, don't give in, make the decision to go on with God.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
And ministering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to CBNNewsChannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Israeli teenagers at an archaeological site have uncovered a rare find. The volunteers came upon a hoard of gold coins that are more than 1,000 years old. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl brings us the story now from Jerusalem.
The 24-karat gold coins date back to the Abbasid Islamic Caliphate that stretched from Persia to North Africa. The treasure, discovered by two Israeli teenagers, came while excavating a site in the middle of a neighborhood in the center of Israel.
Today, when they came to work, when they started digging, they saw a glimmer in the ground. And as they continued excavating, they found a large gold hoard in a small jar.
The youths volunteered during their summer holiday before beginning Army service. Oz Cohen is one of the youth.
It was amazing. I dug in the ground, and when I excavated the soil, saw what looked like very thin leaves. When I looked again, I saw these were gold coins. It was really exciting to find such a special and ancient treasure.
Archaeologist Galit Tal says finding gold is rare.
We don't find many gold hoards in archaeological excavations. When we do find them, we don't find individual coins mostly. We usually find them in hoards because gold being gold, people wanted to keep it close, and so they kept it with them.
The hoard contained 425 gold coins.
The way the gold was buried was obviously done by someone who was in a rush to leave, and so he buried it in the ground. He covered it with the intention of returning to pick it up later, and as you can see, obviously, he never did.
This dig is in what would have been a large industrial area that included wine presses and pottery kilns.
The unique thing about this gold hoard is that it shows us a lot about international commerce of that time period in the area, which was on the rise and prospering, as opposed to the commerce in Europe at the time, where the use of gold actually started dwindling.
From the initial examination, experts say most of the coins date to the end of the 9th century BC. The stash weighed nearly 2 pounds, which would have been a lot of money back then.
It's difficult to tell what you could buy with the coins, but most likely with one coin you could buy some sort of large farm animal like a cow or a horse. And with a hoard of this size, it's likely that you could also buy a large house or mansion in this time period.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Operation Blessing is partnering with Heart for Lebanon to provide much-needed items for victims of the recent explosion in Beirut. 190 people died in the August 4th blast, and more than 6,500 were hurt when highly explosive material detonated. The explosion left 300,000 people homeless and caused $15 billion in direct damage. Operation Blessing is working with area organizations, including 20 churches, to provide food and other supplies. CBN is also helping to refurbish homes damaged by the blast. If you would like to lend a...
The Lebanese government
has failed its own people, but the faith community in Lebanon has not. And the global body of Jesus Christ, along with the generous partnership of Operations Blessing and CBN, we are coming alongside every family that is hurting.
If you would like to lend a hand to Operation Blessing, you can give to the Disaster Relief Fund. Simply call 1-800-700-7000 or visit CBN.com. Stay with us. We're coming right back.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Time now for your Monday motivation. I leave you with this thought. Don't be so quick to call it quits and declare 2020 a wasted year. Before you turn the page to 2021, ask God what you should be doing right now. This year, 2020, is not over, and it is not wasted. With God, absolutely nothing is wasted. With that word, I encourage you to make this a marvelous Monday and be sure to have a wonderful rest of the week. Well, that will do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. I want to remind you, you can always find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel at any time. You can also find them online at cbnnews.com. We'd love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can email us. The address is right there on your screen, newswatch@cbn.com. And of course, you can always reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Certainly hope you will join us again right here next time. We'll see you same time right here tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye, everybody, and God bless.